there's quite a strong case for getting her back to this country. I'm sure the agencies will say there's a security risk, but it seems to me that one young woman coming back here, if we can't monitor her, then we've got a real problem. I don't know if it's very difficult to know if someone has changed completely. Maybe she still, although she's saying she doesn't, still does have sympathy with ISIS.
Yeah.
But I think, bearing in mind, we should show as a nation we are rather better than they are, because they're totally ghastly and appalling. I think to show some clemency and to actually say, right, look, we're going to reconsider this, get you back and run it through the courts and possibly even reinstate her citizenship.
Now then, Britain is being accused of hiding the truth about the smuggling of Shamima Begum into Syria. This week, The Times revealed the Metropolitan Police allegedly knew that a people smuggler working for Canadian intelligence was responsible for helping the schoolgirl and two friends from Bethnal Green join Islamic State in Syria in 2015. There's growing pressure for an independent inquiry into the actions of the police and the intelligence services surrounding the one who came to be known as the ISIS bride. Let's welcome Admiral Lord West, former First Sea Lord of the Royal Navy and a security minister. Admiral Lord West, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your thoughts on this, Alan, a Canadian spy helping to get Shamima Begum into Syria, and then Canadian intelligence, it seems, later going to the Metropolitan Police and wanting it to be covered up. What do you think?
It seems, I have to say, it seems extraordinary. But I can imagine how things like this sometimes happen. What amazes me is that Canadian intelligence didn't let our intelligence people know, so that our people weren't aware. And if our people were aware, then I think it does throw a slightly new light on some of the assessments we've made about removing the national citizenship of this young woman. But I don't know the detail of the intelligence aspect, and of course our intelligence services and the Canadians won't talk about that. But it does sound extraordinary.
It does, doesn't it? Look, and there was Justin Trudeau, the Canadian leader, saying just overnight that he would look into this, and he said the intelligence services business was to follow the rules. But he spoke about intelligence services needing to be flexible and creative, which I guess you could say is about intelligence gathering and intelligence gatherers having their cake and eating it. Are these lines blurred sometimes?
Well, I think sometimes lines do get blurred, and that's why one has to monitor and have an ability to look at what's done by the services. And of course, the Intelligence and Security Committee that we have within Parliament and which I'm a member of, is able to do that, looking at the agencies. But things are blurred. So, for example, it sounds from what's being said as though this man was acting as a facilitator actually in Turkey. So if people got to Turkey, he then was acting as a facilitator to get them on into Syria. That would have given him links into ISIS, and of course that would be useful to have links into ISIS, to have possibly to make some of those people he inserted into Syria to become sleepers and agents and things like that. You can see why there'd been attraction. But I think, bearing in mind these were British nationals and the situation, I mean, this woman was only 15 after all at the time. I think it makes it rather more complicated. And I think we have these things, I think, have to be taken into account, which does draw, we have to look, I think, quite carefully at this whole issue of having to remove their nationality again.
Indeed, because I'm going to be speaking in just a moment to Tasneem Akunji, Shamima Begum's lawyer, but I just want to get your view on that. One of those questions, Lord West, now, is it your view, in the light of this new information, that there is a stronger case for this young girl to be allowed back into this country?
Well, I'll come at it a long-winded way. I mean, basically, let's face it, the things she did when she was with ISIS were horrible. And the initial time she was talked to about it, she showed no contrition. That has now changed. And after all, she was only 15, 16, and things do change. I didn't like the issue. I don't like the issue of withdrawing nationality from people. Well, it's against the law if they haven't got another nationality. And there's no doubt it's cloudy, the whole business of her Bangladeshi nationality. And if she went there, they would probably hang her anyway. I really do think there's quite a strong case for getting her back to this country. I'm sure the agencies will say there's a security risk, but it seems to me that one young woman coming back here, if we can't monitor her, then we've got a real problem. I don't know if it's very difficult to know if someone has changed completely. Maybe she still, although she's saying she doesn't, still does have sympathy with ISIS.
Yeah.
But I think, bearing in mind, we should show as a nation we are rather better than they are, because they're totally ghastly and appalling. I think to show some clemency and to actually say, right, look, we're going to reconsider this, get you back and run it through the courts and possibly even reinstate her citizenship. I know a lot of my ex-colleagues will go, my God, West's gone soft. But I think, I think sometimes one has to show flexibility like that. It doesn't mean I approve of what she did. And I certainly don't approve of ISIS. I'm very glad we killed a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah.
I do think we have to look at it in those terms.
All right, Lord West, that's a really interesting contribution. Thank you for coming on. So Tasneem Akunji, Shamima Begum's lawyer. So what Lord West was saying there will be music to your ears.
Well, no, I appreciate his candor and his view on things, and it's something that I think all right people, sort of thinking people ought to share. Is that when when we're thinking about the application of law, it should be done properly, but also done with some mercy in mind. Indeed, that's one of the oaths that our Queen took on coronation, and that trickles down. So I think it's entirely the appropriate approach. But in terms of music to my ears, hearing and learning that a Western security service was involved in the trafficking of young girls across a border into a war zone where a cohort of them have now died is certainly not music to our ears. I'd rather that weren't the case. But it does certainly bolster or add some weight to the position of Shamima Begum that culpability doesn't rest, certainly not solely with her, and unfortunately it's rests somewhat with their Western security service.
So she was helped across the borders in the way that we hear, according to these reports. It's not suggested she was forced across the borders. So does the background to this, that Shamima Begum made her, she went to this country of her own free will. She joined up with ISIS there, a truly murderous, you don't need me to tell you this, you know what a murderous, sadistic, appalling organization ISIS is, with which she was so closely associated. Does that not count at all in this question of her status and her ability to return to this country?
No, it certainly is in the mix, but that's in the same sort of vein as how we look at, let's say, some of the quote-unquote victims of Ghislaine Maxwell and people of that ilk, people who trafficked children for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Now, in many of those cases, trafficking is not kidnapping. Kidnapping is taking somebody against their will, but those girls who were trafficked by them willingly were, at the age of 15 or underage, were willingly going over to the US, willingly going over, and in fact, some of them were recruiting other girls to be further victims of these monsters. Now, the reason why we have trafficking legislation is because when it comes to children, whatever they may do, they're not as culpable or anywhere near as culpable as adults because they can be manipulated. And those are the arguments that are going to be deployed in November, which means a hearing takes place.
And so the hearing, I need to be brief. Forgive me for that. You'll understand. And just tell me, where do you take this from here? In the light of these new reports and this new information, how do you mean to use it?
Well, we imagine that a lot of this material would have been available to Sajid Javid when he stripped Shamima Begum of citizenship. A lot of these reports are from 2015, and of course, Javed decided to strip her in 2019. So we'd be surprised if he wasn't aware of these matters. It's going to be a question of the balancing. Was his decision to strip, knowing that she was a victim of trafficking, was that something that was disproportionate in the context?
All right, Tasneem Akunji, you have to leave it there. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Shamima Begum's lawyer there.